The recent California fires have completely devastated so many families in the Palisades community and the surrounding neighborhoods in LA County. When things like this happen, I often wonder how people get through these devastating events and what impact it has not only on their personal lives, but on their financial lives as well. In this video, I'm going to walk you through how these horrible disasters affect property values, insurance rates, and the overall financial position of the people impacted and what everyone can do to help. Let's go. One of the biggest things I heard in the first couple of days of the disaster was that so many people had their homeowners insurance canceled in the months leading up to the fire. In fact, in 2024, almost 70% of the policies in the Palisades neighborhood, which is one of the main areas affected by the California fires, were not renewed. Side note, it's a little bit interesting that these neighborhoods saw the biggest non-renewals in the months leading up to the event that would completely decimate their community. That's an interesting coincidence. Now, a lot of the non-renewals are partially because people didn't want to pay the 21% increase that happened in 2023, and partially because of State Farm wanting to limit policies in high-risk areas, which, is understandable. Much of California, of course, is a high-risk area. State Farm's position is that they're at risk for not having enough money to pay claims because of high construction costs due to inflation, windstorm damage, and water loss claims, and then California insurance policies not allowing catastrophe modeling and reinsurance costs. Now, reinsurance is basically insurance for the insurance company in case they aren't able to cover all their claims. Now, State Farm is the biggest insurer of homes in California, but it's not the only one to limit or stop selling homeowners insurance in California altogether. Allstate, Farmers, USAA, Travelers, Nationwide, and Chubb also recently limited new homeowners policies in California as well. So it doesn't seem to be a profitable business to provide insurance in California right now. And this, of course, isn't good for homeowners. Now, hopefully people who lost coverage were able to get coverage through another program like the California FAIR Plan, which provides basic fire insurance when you can't get it through traditional insurance companies. But this plan really only covers 3% of residents, so most likely there are a lot of people without insurance. So what happens when people don't have traditional insurance or a plan through something like the FAIR Plan? Well, they're kind of in a tough position. They're basically on their own. Unless they lost their home during a state of emergency, which is what usually happens during a natural disaster. And that's no different in this case. California Governor Gavin Newsom declared a state of emergency on January 7th. So FEMA was able to step in and start helping people out. Now, FEMA covers temporary housing, home repairs, home replacement, and other needs during a disaster. This is very important. The problem with FEMA coverage is the fact that it's only meant to make the home livable. FEMA isn't gonna fully restore your home to how it was before the disaster happened. So all of your high-end finishes probably won't be replaced. Also, FEMA has something called the 50% rule for homes within a flood zone, and 20% of LA is in a flood zone. This rule basically states that if the cost of repairing your home is equal to or greater than 50% of the pre-damage market value of the house structure, not the entire property, but just the building itself, then you have to have the home brought up into compliance with the current building codes and standards. This is regardless of whether or not the damage occurred because of a flood or something else like a fire. And of course, if your home was completely destroyed, it has to be built to updated codes and standards as well. The problem with this rule is that, again, FEMA typically only covers the cost to make the home safe, sanitary, and functional, not doing full repairs or upgrades. So this won't include the cost to comply with new building codes and regulations, which is pretty crazy, right? Not everyone is going to have the money to pay out of pocket for upgrading or rebuilding their house to the newest codes and standards. If a homeowner has flood insurance, they can get up to $30,000 from insurance to cover the increased cost of compliance. But if you don't have insurance at all, or if your house was damaged by a non-flood event like a fire, you're out of luck. Let me know in the comments if you know anyone who was able to get the cost of upgrades covered by FEMA during another disaster in previous years. I'd be curious to understand that. I'm hoping people in this situation are able to find additional help because having to cover this cost, especially during devastating times like this, seems pretty unreasonable. Another issue with FEMA is that it only covers primary residences, not investment properties. So if you had investment properties in the area that were destroyed during the natural disaster and didn't have homeowners insurance, you're out of luck. Now, hopefully you wouldn't have uninsured investment properties out there, so I don't think this is a big issue for most people. Now, given the fact that many people didn't have insurance and many neighborhoods were completely destroyed, after everything is said and done, the impact this would have on property values in the future will probably be high. A lot of homes won't be built back to their previous condition if they're built back at all. And who wants to live in a neighborhood that's been completely decimated and destroyed by fire? I mean, it doesn't seem like these occurrences are stopping. If it were me, I'd rather move somewhere that didn't have these issues. So I gotta imagine that even after homes are rebuilt, that property values will have taken a major hit. And actually, a 2020 study on natural disasters and housing prices showed that natural disasters do have a negative impact on housing prices because natural disasters tend to increase or happen periodically. Also, insurance rates go up after natural disasters, which also leads to lower housing prices. Another older 2004 study of a Buffalo Creek fire in Colorado showed that even neighboring communities not directly impacted by the fire showed a 15% decrease in housing prices. Another study, I believe done in 2008, shows that the first fire near a community can reduce housing prices by 10%, while the second fire reduces housing prices by nearly 23%. So these periodic disasters definitely have an impact on housing prices. When places like California see periodic disasters, it also lowers consumption and investment in the area, which also has a negative impact on the local economy as well. So overall, these disasters not only take a personal, emotional, and immediate financial toll, they also impact the larger community in terms of housing values and people's overall net worth as well. Now, luckily, people have short memories, so housing values do tend to recover after a few years. The next question I had was, how long does it take to rebuild when an entire community has been destroyed? And this really depends on the extent of the damage, the funding that's available from government agencies like FEMA and HUD, how much local communities and organizations like churches step up to help, and whatever new urban planning policies and regulations are put into effect after the disaster. One example of a large-scale disaster was Hurricane Katrina in 2005, which killed up to 1,800 people and wiped out over 200,000 homes. Now, according to one study in the American Meteorological Society journal, after Katrina, it took over 3 years on average for victims to find stable housing. Now, that's a long time to go without a home. And of course, rebuilding doesn't bring back their lost lives, memories, and pictures, family keepsakes, and heirlooms. There's just so much loss in these events that I just can't imagine it. So what should you do if you're impacted by a natural disaster, like the California fires? After you're safe and you've contacted friends and family to let them know you're safe and to see if they're safe, and after you've found shelter, first, if possible, you should gather all essential documents like IDs, insurance cards, financial records. And if you don't have these, start the process of getting replacement documents because those will be very important for everything you need to do in the upcoming weeks. You'll need medical information like health insurance info and list of medications. You'll need financial and legal documentation such as vehicle registrations, mortgages, and insurance policies so that you can request assistance from insurance providers and government disaster assistance programs. You want to get a complete copy of our homeowners insurance policy and contact your insurance company to report the damage and start the claims process as soon as you can because that can take several months to go through. Hopefully you have documentation and photos of everything. Now, this is something that a lot of people don't do, but they should. It's always a good idea to document the valuable things in your home, at least whenever you review or update your homeowner's insurance policy to make sure you have enough coverage. But really, it's good to do this periodically, like once a year or so. If you don't document your valuable items, insurance may not cover it, or at least they won't cover the full amount they otherwise might have. FEMA actually has a good checklist for safeguarding your critical documents and valuables. I'll link that in the description for your reference. Also, as you live in whatever temporary housing you found, you'll also want to track all of your additional expenses that came from not living at home. Your insurance policy should cover additional living expenses for a certain period of time. If you are a victim of the recent California wildfires, the California Department of Insurance also provided a top 10 tips for wildfire claimants. I'll link that in the description as well. Now, if you're in a disaster and don't have insurance, you'll want to log on to FEMA website and register for disaster assistance. FEMA should help you with grants for temporary housing. They may provide help for damage to your home, vehicle, and other personal property as well. They'll help with emergency food, clothing, and utilities, and they also may help you with a lot of other expenses like childcare and medical and dental expenses as well. So FEMA may not be perfect or cover everything, but it's a valuable resource if you're in a disaster. You should also reach out to your local church. Whether you're a Christian or not, churches are always some of the first organizations on the ground helping people out. So find some of those churches and get some help. Take care and God bless.